This is the December 4th, 2024 meeting of the Board of Estimates. Is now called to order. As the board continues to meet in this hybrid function, we ask all folks who are with us today in person to ensure that your electronic devices are turned off or at a minimum placed on silence so you do not disrupt today's proceedings. For those of you who are joining us virtually, I will ask if there is an opportunity for you to speak when you're called on, when you're called upon, please announce your name and the organization you are calling in from, and then speak loudly and clearly as you present. Before we go to our clerk, I'd like to recognize Council President-elect Zeke Cohen in the back. If you could please give a round of applause for our new incoming councilman, President. At this time, I'm going to ask our amazing clerk, Ms. Celeste Amato, for any corrections, additions, and noted abstentions to today's agenda. Oh, the newlywed. Oh, yeah. Excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, everyone. This morning, we have one walk-on item to place on the non-routine agenda. That is SB 24-14803 for the City Council. This is a grant agreement with Elevate Baltimore for $140,000, and this is being walked on at the request of the President. The action related to that item is, again, an approval of an agreement with Elevate Baltimore. The amount of money is $140,000, and this grant agreement is by and between the Mayor and City Council of Baltimore and Elevate Baltimore, Inc. Through the city's FY25 budget process, the city awarded $140,000 of city general funds to be used for general operation at the direction of the Council President, Nick Mosby. We have the following deferrals to note this morning. SB 24-13988 for the Department of Transportation, award TR 23004R, Inspire Schools Sidewalk Reconstruction for $929,925. This item has been deferred until December 18th at the request of the Comptroller. SB 24-14435 for the Department of Real Estate, an agreement of sale, 1012 East 43rd Street, Scarlet Covering, Inc. This item has been deferred until January 8th at the request of the Comptroller. We have no withdrawals to note this morning. We do have the following protest and/or statements of opposition and/or support to note this morning. SB 24-13912, Department of Transportation, award TR 24014, resurfacing highways at various locations Southeast Sector 4 for $4,257,132. There has been a protest received from M. Louise Construction. SB 24-13910, Department of Transportation, award TR 24012, resurfacing highway at various locations Northwest Sector 2 for $3,979,404. There has been a response received from P. Flanagan and a protest received from M. Louise Construction. SB 24-13909, Department of Transportation, award TR 24011, resurfacing highways at various locations Northeast Sector 1 for $4,278,862. There has been a response received from P. Flanagan, a protest received from Gray & Sons, and a protest received from M. Louise Construction. And SB 24-14783 from the Office of the Labor Commissioner, a memorandum of agreement between the Enoch Pratt Free Library and the Pratt Workers United AFSCME Maryland Council, number 3, for $1,686,481. A statement of support has been received from Antoinette Wilson and Kelly McBride Gill. We have the following items that will be heard as part of the non-routine agenda this morning, and they are as follows. SB 24-14293, Bureau of Procurement and Unauthorized Procurement for OpenGov for $76,125. SB 24-13778, Bureau of Procurement, Unauthorized Procurement, Delicious Made Simple for $480. SB 24-13910, Department of Transportation, and award TR 24012, resurfacing highway in various locations, Northwest Sector. SB 24-13912, Department of Transportation Award, TR 24014, resurfacing highways at various locations southeast sector. SB 24-13909, Department of Transportation Award, TR 24011, resurfacing highways at various locations northeast sector 1. SB 24-14417, City Schools FY 26 through 31 Capital Improvements Program for $357,889,000. The walk-on item, SB 24-14803, for the City Council grant agreement with Elevate Baltimore Incorporated for $140,000. And SB 24-14783, Office of the Labor Commissioner, memorandum of agreement between the Enoch Pratt Free Library and the Pratt Workers United, AFSCME, Maryland Council 3. Thank you for that enthusiasm. I usually don't get that kind of reaction to my dramatic readings, so I appreciate it. We have the following abstentions to note this morning. The Honorable Mayor Brandon M. Scott is abstaining on the following items. SB 24-13542, Provider Agreement, the Johns Hopkins University. SB 24-13651, Provider Agreement, the Johns Hopkins University. SB 24-13151, Provider Agreement, the Johns Hopkins University. SB 24-14142, Grant Agreement FY25 Operating for East Baltimore Development, Inc. And SB 24-14471, Minor Privilege Application, 528 North Washington Street, Johns Hopkins University. The Honorable President Nick Mosby has no abstentions to note this morning. The Honorable Comptroller Bill Henry is abstaining on all travel requests and travel reimbursements. City Solicitor Ebony Thompson has no abstentions to note this morning, and the Director of Public Works, Khalil Zaid, has no abstentions to note this morning. We also have the following no votes for items on the routine agenda to read into the record. The Honorable President Nick Mosby is abstaining on the following, is voting no on the following items. SB 24-14134, Grant Agreement, ARPA, Baltimore and Patapsco Mini Plaza, LLC. SB 24-13814, Grant Agreement, Cherry Hill Development Corporation. SB 24-13844, Termination Agreement, Baltimore Redlining and Blight Elimination Community Development Corporation. SB 24-14534, Position Creation for Planning. SB 24-14413, Amendment 1, Grant Agreement, South Baltimore Community Land Trust, Inc. SB 24-14573, First Amendment, Grant Agreement with Southeast Community Development Corporation. SB 24-14551, First Amendment, Grant Agreement, Baltimore City Community College. SB 24-14399, Amendment 1, Grant Agreement, Maryland Philanthropy Network, Inc. and Black Yield Institute, Incorporated. SB 24-14602, Amendment 1, Grant Agreement, Baltimore City Board of School Commissioners. SB 24-14254, Grant Agreement, ARPA, Homes for America, Managing Member of Restoration Gardens, LLC. SB 24-14685, MONSE, the United Way of Central Maryland, Inc., ARPA grant. SB 24-14366, Award RFQ 000563, GFT signage. SB 24-14408, increase to SCON 004408, hoses, equipment, appliances, and tools. SB 24-14393, Amendment 1, Grant Agreement, Leadenhall Baptist Church. SB 24-14567, Amendment 1, Grant Agreement, Baltimore Core, Inc. SB 24-14606, Amendment 3, Interagency Agreement for Baltimore City Rec and Parks. And SB 24-14594, Fixed Pricing Policy Dispositions, November 2024. Mr. President, that concludes our opening statement this morning, and I would like to thank you on behalf of the awesome clerk and staff. It's been a pleasure working with you and your team in service of this board.
Thank you so much, Madam Clerk. And again, congratulations. Give it up for Celeste. Her nuptials. At this time, I'll ask for a motion to approve and adopt the opening statement.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. The opening statement has now been adopted. I would now like to direct the board's attention to a memorandum from my office dated December the 2nd, 2024, identifying matters to be considered as routine agenda items, together with any corrections, abstentions, additions, and no votes that have been read by our amazing clerk. I will entertain a motion to approve all items contained on the routine agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and probably seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. The routine agenda item is now adopted. The first item on non-routine agenda for this morning can be found on pages 176 and 177. That's SB 2414783, Office of Labor Commissioner. This request is to note a side letter agreement between the Enoch Pratt Free Library and Pray Workers United. AFSCME Maryland Council Number 3, on behalf of the Labor Commission or the administration?
Yes, good morning, Deborah Moore Carter.
There we go.
Here I am.
That's a familiar face.
Yes.
The floor is
Good
yours.
morning, honorable members of the board. This is Deborah Moore Carter, Labor Commissioner for the City of Baltimore, and I am here to present the agreement between Pratt Workers United and the Enoch Pratt Free Library. Until several years ago, the employees of the Enoch Pratt Free Library were considered unrepresented CUB and unrepresented MAPS or unrepresented Local 44. AFSCME Maryland Council 3 won the right to organize the employees, and they are now known as Pratt Workers United. And they started negotiations in earnest. The Office of the Labor Commissioner was not a part of the negotiations. So the decision was made not to grant the wage increases. However, with collective bargaining and negotiations, a lot of times it continues long past the time that you expect it to. So the employees did not receive a wage increase for FY24 or FY25. So the agreement before you is to correct that. So the employees who were formerly considered CUB unrepresented will receive the 4% wage increases for FY24 and FY25 until there's a new agreement reached. And the employees who were formerly considered MAPS unrepresented will receive the 3% and 3% for FY24 and FY25. So what will happen is they will get a year of retroactive wages for FY24. They will get retroactivity from July 1st of this year up to December, and then the current wages going forward. And hopefully there'll be a new agreement in place so that the employees can be properly represented by AFSCME and receive everything that they're entitled to. So for those employees, Christmas is coming early this year. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions or concerns from members of the board? Mr. Mayor? No? We're all good? Everyone wants the librarians paid?
Yes.
Well, with that, I'll entertain a motion.
Thought that was a note.
The reason, the reason that we put it on non-routine was because we got a statement of support from someone who said that they wanted to address the board.
Is there anyone,
Antoinette Wilson or Kelly McBride Gill?
Ms. Wilson or Ms. Bride Hill? Would you like to speak? Could you come up and speak? Yeah. We have to vote on this, right? I'm sorry, please press the button on the right and state your name. There you go.
Okay, I'm Deborah Elfenbein. I'm a librarian at the Central Library. And thank you very much. And I'm really excited to be here. And I know Antoinette is on the way. We thought it would be a little later. You guys are really timely. And we're still in bargaining, so we're really happy this is happening. And it would be really wonderful. It could be implemented, as you say, as a Christmas present, because we're really hungry for it, as you say. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. We like the swag.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So actually, we do not have to. We will not vote on this. This is just something that we need to note. It's fine. You can leave it on. But you're going to be happy.
Trust me,
All right.
he's going to talk too.
Merry Christmas. All right, so again, no motion. We'll just note this item, and we're going to move on to our next item. The next item on the non-routine agenda can be found on pages 178 and 179, SB 2414417, Department of Planning. This request is to approve the capital improvement program request for the Baltimore City Schools fiscal years 2026 through 2031. On behalf of Planning, we have...
Hi, good morning. Sarah Parnellum from the Department of Planning, here for the Baltimore City Schools Capital Improvement Program. City Schools prepares and submits its 6-year program on a separate track from other city agencies because the requests go through the state public school construction program process. The local funding this year for public schools is increased to $27.5 million. This is an increase from $19 million in prior years. So we're very excited to have this increase that was voted on by voters in November. The majority of the funds will be used to supplement Healthy Schools funding from the state that was received in FY25. And the highest priority projects this year, and those likely to be funded by the state, are major projects such as Furley, Armstead, Marie Fairing, and the Northeast Building. And I have a representative here from schools if you have any further questions.
Thank you so much. It seems all centralized in one area. Any questions? Mr. Mayor?
Just to, the council president, right, it is a lot of schools in Northeast Baltimore, but, Mr. President, as you'll be reminded, when 21st century schools came out, it was the only area that didn't have any 21st century schools. So this has been a long writing of that issue with myself and my good Senator McCray in the school system, and we're just happy to see that happen. Furley will be opening soon, and then Northeast over the next few years. So it's a good thing for Northeast Baltimore.
Yep, and I think that's actually part of the story, Mr. Mayor. When we talk about equity, I know that you and the senator were fighting on a regular basis to ensure that we lit up some schools in Northeast. So thank you. Are there any additional questions or concerns from members of this board?
Thank you.
So moved.
It's been moved and probably second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is now approved. Thank you so much. The next item on non-routine agenda can be found on pages 186, and that is SB 2414293, Bureau of Procurement on behalf of the Department of Housing and Community Development. This request is to approve an unauthorized procurement with OpenGov Incorporated. On behalf of the city, we have
Adam Manny, your Chief Procurement Officer. Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. CPO. Good morning.
How are you today, sir?
Pretty good.
Thank you. We're here to request from the board permission to pay $76,125 to OpenGov. This is a software program specifically created and designed to provide data for the housing for code enforcement. This board did approve the initial contract back in 2023. It ran through the end of January of 2024. Looks like OpenGov had been sending information to a employee who is no longer with the city. They continue to provide the services. We continue to use the services, and we are asking permission to pay for those services through January of 2025. And my office is working with Housing to come back to this board early next year with a new contract with OpenGov for approval for a multi-year so that we can continue using this service.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions or concerns? Mr. Comptroller, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Are there any measures in place to prevent the submission of invoices when there's no valid purchase order?
There are. The system won't allow them to go through, and that's part of what was happening. In the past, business partners could submit to a mailbox, actually in your office in accounts payable. That has gone away, where they actually now submit the invoices directly into Workday. And since there was no active purchase order or contract, of course, that wasn't happening. OpenGov was then reaching out to Housing saying, how do we pay the bill? How do we get paid? And then this came up. We are working on improving the processes so that this doesn't happen.
But how long did OpenGov continue to provide services after they found that they were unable to submit an invoice?
This has been going on since the end of January this year. Traditionally, with software, they bill a year in advance. They bill for the entire year, so they might have submitted it. Software is one of the few industries where they get paid in advance. It's the industry standard. So if you're getting a SaaS service or a software service, they provide the service, and then the entity like ourselves would pay for that service for the entire year.
So this $76,125 represents just one invoice?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Gotcha.
It covers the service from January of 2024 through January of 2025.
Okay.
And then we'll be coming back to this board with a new contract, hopefully a multi-year contract, to pick up in February of '25 and moving forward for this.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Comptroller. Are there any other questions or concerns from members of this board? Hearing and seeing none, at this time, we'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is now approved. Thank you so much, Mr. CPO. The next item on the routine agenda can be found on page 187, SB 2413778, Bureau of Procurement. On behalf of Fire Department, this request is to approve an unauthorized procurement with Delicious Made Simple. On behalf of the administration, we have
Adam Manny, your CPO. And we're requesting permission to pay an invoice for $480. This is for Delicious Made Simple for catering services. The services were utilized during Hurricane Debbie. We didn't have a purchase order in place or use a P card for it, so we have the outstanding invoice, and we're requesting permission to pay for that invoice now.
Mr. Comptroller. I'm sure this is a joke.
No, this is actually not a joke.
Okay, all right.
Is there anybody here from the fire department?
Good morning, Mr. Comptroller. Joey Henderson, Director of Office of Emergency Management.
Okay, thank you. The only reason we even bothered to put this one on here, because it's only $480, is because this is not the first time that the fire department has submitted unauthorized procurements on this contract. And we were concerned, like we talked about this internally. We're like, we could just let this go because it's only $480, except that we were afraid that would send the wrong message back to the fire department that you don't need to follow the rules if it's not a big deal. And there are very specific rules on how we're supposed to be acquiring food that all of the rest of us try to deal with. And if there's some fashion in which these rules don't work for the kind of service, because I understand you guys, it's in your name, your emergency management, you deal with like if there's some fashion in which you need to be procuring stuff, then let's work out some way that it's not going to end up bringing you back to the board to get $480 of food addressed. So is this something that we can talk about offline, or is this something that for some reason this was really out of the ordinary and you don't expect anything like this to ever happen again?
So this was a no-noticed event. We did have a short turnaround. However, this is something that our office has been working with Mr. Manning on. So going forward, we don't have these issues because we will always continue to have no-notice events.
Right, exactly.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, okay. So we just want to make sure that we find a process that works for your needs so that you don't have to, go out of it and have to end up here. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
That was it. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or concerns? Hearing and seeing none, it's time I entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. The next item on our routine agenda can be found on pages 230 and 231, SB 2413910, Department of Transportation. This request is to approve an award to P. Flanagan and Sons for TR 24012, resurfacing highway at various locations, Northwest Sector 2. A protest has been received by Robert Fulton DeShiel on behalf of M. Louise Construction. On behalf of the administration, we have.
Good morning, Director Corinne Johnson.
I'll call you up, Mr. DeShiel. Yeah, you relax.
All right.
Chill out.
Yes, I can see that. So, good morning, Council President. Very, very
Madam
eager this
Director,
morning.
go ahead,
Yes.
yeah.
Good morning, honorable members of the board, council president, comptroller, mayor, and everyone. So for this item, it is for one of our resurfacing contracts. On this particular item, there was a matter of, one of the big questions for today is going to be a matter of the mobilization item, just to be upfront with that. So in the contract, there was both written language and parentheses, a number written. In the written language, it was written as 8% for the total lump sum mobilization cost, and in parentheses, there was a number written as 10%. Typically, we go by the written words. And so in this case, with the bids, there were some instances where some bid actually even over the 10% threshold, some bid with the 8%. In this case, for this item, in evaluating the bids, P. Flanagan is the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, and that's why we're recommending award to them. So I know there were different protests, different opinions, so we will be hearing from them. We also have Law Department and Sinbad here as well if there are any other questions. So,
Thank you so much. Are there any questions or concerns from members of the board? Hearing and seeing none, thank you. At this time, we're going to hear from the protester, Mr. Jashil.
Good morning, members of the board. I'm here on my birthday to tell you.
Oh, you got your birthday tie on too, man. Happy birthday.
I gotta say the comptroller's already admonished me, but you know, the last 50 years of my professional life, a lot of that time has been spent right here in this well.
Wow, yeah.
So this is our home. Here's the bottom line. This contract was not one that was bid for the mobilization figure. It was bid for the low bid. So I think that it's important to remind everybody of what the competitive bid process is. It is a process for identifying the lowest responsive and responsible bid. So even if there is an error in some part of the bid, that's not the end of the inquiry. The inquiry is what is ultimately in the best interest of the city. You're being asked to award contracts for almost $2 million over the low bid. In this particular instance, I think it's around $700,000. The figures are in my paper. No one, not any of the lawyers from all the big firms, not even the Department of Transportation, has offered you any reason why that is in the city's best interest. They simply say there was a mistake. Okay, we admit that. There was an ambiguity in the contract in the bid documents. We admit that. 8% in words, 10% in numbers. I don't know why nobody picked up that, and maybe it was intended. I don't really know. But the bottom line is we're not bidding on the mobilization. Mobilization is paid 50% up front, and the rest of it's paid over 6 months, over 5 months, I'm sorry. The bottom line is what is the cost to the city for the service that you're getting, that you want to receive? And in this instance, no one, you can read, I've read every one of these papers, including the ones from Flanagan that recently received. No one has said anything about why it is in the city's best interest to pay that additional money. And I submit to you, because they can't. It simply doesn't make any sense. If you were paying this money out of your pocket, would you spend an extra $1.5 million just because somebody's getting $35,000 more up front? Doesn't affect the bottom line. Doesn't affect what they get over the course of the work. Doesn't affect the final price. Doesn't affect quality, quantity of the work. Would you just give the money away for no reason? This is a perfect example of why the minor irregularity provision was written into the city procurement, written into state procurement, written into federal procurement. It's precisely this, and none of the bidders can complain. Whether they did or did not reach or go over the cap did not affect the amount that was bid by a single bidder, and no one has argued that. No one has argued that their bid would change or that the ranking of the bids would change based upon their application or their interpretation of the mobilization issue. So we've got a situation here where no bidders are affected in reality, but simply because of the mistake, the city's being asked to pay almost $2 million more. Now, I'm not going to make the same argument for all 4 contracts. My client, which is, by the way, a minority firm, my client was the low bidder on all 4 contracts. It has no reason not to award. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. DeShiel?
Well, I will be asking DOT to answer some of his
Mr.
questions.
DeShiel.
Yeah, no.
Any questions for Mr. DeShiel before we turn it back over? Madam Director?
One thing to add for TR 24012, on this one, the bid amount for Emily Louise was $3,728,397.31, and P. Flanagan was $3,979,404. So it was just over $200,000 difference. Additionally, because this is a resurfacing contract, the mobilization is more of an upfront, like a lump sum amount, whereas the other items are bid items with line items associated with it. So there are estimated quantities in the contract, and then based on the actual work, those quantities of work can go up or down. So the actual amount that we pay out can fluctuate based on the actual work performed. And so if there are certain items that cost less, then and we perform more of that, then okay, we spend a little bit less in those areas because it's a lower value. But if it's something that has a higher unit price and we end up performing more work in that area, then we potentially could end up spending more money in those areas. So it just depends on the amount of work that is being done in actual construction based on the site condition changes. So I just want to provide that clarification.
Mr. Comptroller?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just make sure I'm following that properly. So if the mobilization is fixed at 8%, then you're going to provide the company with 8% of their bid up front.
Yes, it's based on the bid amount.
It's based on the bid amount. Okay, so are you saying then the other part of what you're saying in terms of how the bid is for materials and the cost or amount, the amount may change?
Actually, hold on one second.
Yeah.
The actual wording is it shall not exceed 8% for the total price of the contract. So the way it's based is that it's a percentage of the, hold on.
Dollar.
Let me get that. I might be getting my state and city contract language a little bit mixed up there. So I might need to phone a friend to get that actually right.
That's okay. I wasn't sure who you were looking at.
Piece?
I think that's the 10 and the 8%.
Let me verify that piece real quick, actually.
10%, not 2.
Vimal Depkota, Chief of Engineering and Construction. Yeah, that mobilization cost, if it is 8%, we pay 50% at the beginning. That's a cash flow to the contractor. They are not related to the bid items. So bid items, if it is concrete per cubic yard, it's separate.
Okay, so for example, if M. Louise's bid was $3.7 million, if they had been awarded the contract, you would have, the mobilization would have been 8% of that, and of the 8% of that, you would have given them 50% as a lump sum up front, and then provided 8% of each new what? Like how does it get?
Well, one thing to clarify, so the 8% is a cap.
Yeah.
So they have the option of, say, going up to that 8%. They could do 7.5% in their bidding. So we're not necessarily saying that this is your price, but that is just their cap.
Oh,
and so what
okay.
he's saying is that when we're paying it out, we're paying that 50% up
50%
front,
of the-
and then the other 50% is
will
then
be
being
prorated.
prorated
So
for the rest of the payments.
given all of that, how would you answer the question of why is the mobilization or the lack of I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this. The fact that a bid exceeded the mobilization rate that you'd put in there, but had an overall bid number that was lower than the rest, why wouldn't it be in the city's best interest to simply say, well, we're going to take the low bid, but they're going to have to live with the actual mobilization cap, even if what they wrote down on their bid exceeds that?
I think that goes into, we'll have the chief of staff, if you
thank
don't
you.
mind,
Appreciate that.
of the law department address this whole minor irregularity, because I think what you're saying is see past that. And I think that was Mr. DeShield's argument about see past that so that you can move on. And I want to
Good morning.
Matthew, address.
Thank you,
Bradford,
Mr.
Chief of Staff
Thank you,
for the
ma'am.
Law Department. Just a few points. One, of course, the board has plenary and broad authority in its management of city
Ooh,
contracts.
plenary. Okay.
But with that principle in mind, the Law Department agrees that exceeding a mobilization cap is not a minor irregularity, precisely for the points that were made earlier, that this is a cost that the city pays up front, and these costs are paid immediately, and it's important that city bidders comply with city requirements. And so I think the comptroller made a point earlier about rules.
Yeah,
There's a
yeah.
reason why we have these rules. And I think for this first contract, the M. Luis amount went over not just the 8%, but over the 10% as well,
Yeah.
which is much more substantial than what DOT actually intended with the contract. And so for your broader question about what's the reason for looking to the mobilization cap in the context of the broader contract, a minor irregularity is something that's non-substantive, immaterial, and inconsequential, and exceeding a mobilization cap cannot be that, particularly given that DOT made it a hard cap in its bidding requirements.
But I guess what I'm trying to say is our rule is, and it was expressed in the bid documents, our rule is that the cap for mobilization is 8%, right? That
In the bidding specifications.
in the bidding
yes.
specifications, our rule is that it's 8%.
Correct.
Okay. So the fact that a bidder would say, yeah, but we'd like to get 15%. The fact that they say we'd like to get 15%, even though we've already made it clear we only give 8%, why is that saying, instead of disqualifying them for the fact that they asked for a number over the cap, why wouldn't we just say, well, you only get 8%. Like, we'll take your bid of $3.7 million, but we're just not going to give you more than 8% in terms of mobilization.
Well, the position would be that that's a non-responsive bid, that we have required you to submit a bid with a mobilization cap at that number, and you have not complied with it.
Exactly, and to addition to that, we can say that about other issues where you can say, oh, let's just ignore that piece of that, and then you have to look at the burden that DOT and procurement is going to have to look at. We put out our rules, especially with the hard cap, and if they can't acknowledge those, then we move on. And then to the, just really quickly, to the director's point, in terms of those other bidding, those are fluctuations, right? But what we do know up front is the amount that the city would have to pay up front. And if they can't even adhere to that, before we even get to those fluctuations, that's not a minor irregularity. That is something that they've said that you had to comply with, and if you don't do that, I think that places an additional burden on the administration for them not to have to just say, I'm going to see past certain things.
I get what you're saying. I guess what I'm asking is, why does the city treat that as something you have to answer properly? Okay, we've set a limit at 8%. That's what we're saying in the bid specification. We've set the limit. Why do we need, as part of the bid that's being placed, why do we need them to put any number there?
Because it could be lower, and the city could benefit from that. So if we just that's kind of my point, is that and that goes back to the original question of why is the mobilization number more important than the overall low bid number?
To the solicitor.
Can I add one more thing?
Yes.
Yeah, can I add one more thing? So when you start talking about a lot of resurfacing contracts specifically, those contracts are related to specific items and locations. And then these numbers could fluctuate, and in many times will be less. So if you're talking about the percentage, in this case, the percentage is going to make a big difference. The 2% between the 8% and the 10%, that makes $85,000 already. 85,000 of that. If you talk about the amount of the contract coming less than that, so you're going to start seeing that this could easily be that the second bidder at some point will be lower. If the contract didn't reach that amount, the amount here is 4.257. If the amount of the units that are used in the contract, because they might not get to that point in the contract at any point in those contracts that they use. So at some point, if that item has not been dealt directly with, and mobilization is an item in a lot of contracts in which the contractor decided at that point that we're going to elevate that amount at some point. So in this case, what we say that is a critical item in the bid document, the mobilization item.
And just to clear, you would have to evaluate that in the context of other contracting and bidding requirements such as MWE and WBE goals. Contractor could come in and say, well, I only did not meet this by a certain amount, but it is a bidding requirement for the city and it's important that the city enforce its rules.
I get, okay, I'm still processing why the mobilization could change the overall amount of money that we actually pay when it's supposed to just be a percentage of the bid. So I'm still processing that, but I definitely, I think it's a choice on our part whether we want to make the mobilization ceiling an issue that a bid could or could not be non-responsive on, in the same sort of fashion that we have other things where we don't. I'm trying to think of something we definitely don't do in terms of contract management, but we don't bother to ask people if they want us to do it because we're not going to do it. Why would we make that? Now we're back to you could bid lower. You could offer a mobilization number that was significantly below the whatever ceiling we put. Is that the case in this? Did P. Flanagan, propose a mobilization of 3%?
I'll ask DOT.
They were still under. They were still under the actual 8%.
Yeah, but
max.
by how much?
What's the delta?
Percent. I mean, it's $2,000. Yeah.
Percentage.
No. I mean, what was the percent?
I don't think I have that figure in my notes, but it was less than the 8%.
But was it 7.95%, or was it
It wasn't too significant because it was only $2,000.
Yeah, what's the delta? What's the two numbers?
Yeah, I'm just trying to get.
It's 340,000 was the mobilization amount for Plea Flanagan. The 8% was 342, but again, that's in the context of their bid.
And then what was it for M. Louise?
M. Louise was over the 10%.
Yeah.
16,000.
By 16,000.
So is that
$4 million contract.
358?
No, it was 550. 550,000.
Can you come up speaking to Mike?
Yeah.
It's
What's your
Hi.
mobilization? Please announce
Paul
yourself.
Kaola from Gallagher, Violation Jones. I'm here on behalf of P. Flanagan and Sons. Good morning.
Okay.
Yeah, the M. Louise mobilization price for this contract was $550,000.
No. What was P. Flanagan's?
You don't have it?
Because
It was under the 8%.
well, I'm just going to say that the number I was given, the number that I've given here was that P. Flanagan's bid was $3,979,000, and a mobilization of $340,000 would be 8.5%. So some number is wrong, or it's over 8%. And just which number is wrong?
The number is under 8%. I don't know what the number is.
And I also will point out that you can get a lower percentage mobilization number by having a higher bid. So it would seem that if the city is trying to encourage people to have a lower mobilization percentage, what you end up with is you end up encouraging bidders to provide higher bids so that they can get more money up front. Doesn't that make sense arithmetically?
No, because they don't win the bid. If all the bidders are responsive and they're not the lowest bidder, they don't win the bid. So that wouldn't happen.
If all the bidders were responsive and okay.
Yeah, so
I got
may
you.
I, Comptroller Henry, may I address the earlier question?
Sure.
So you were basically saying this is just the city telling the bidders that we're not paying more than 8%. That's not correct. These are the specifications that go to the bidders, and they tell the bidders, you have to comply with these rules. It's a set of rules. It's not the city. The city is saying you better not bid more than 8% for mobilization. There's a really good reason for it. The mobilization is paid up front. Let's say, under your theory, you could put 100% of the bid under mobilization. I want to get all the money up front, and I make the lowest bid. And your point would be, well, what's wrong with that? We could just disregard their 100% on mobilization and cap them. But the problem is the instructions to the bidders are not, this is what we're going to do.
I'm going to cut you off right there because you misunderstood my point. I'm saying, why are we letting people ask us or tell us in their bid what percentage of mobilization they want? We've already established we're willing to give you up to 8%. So why do we make that a variable in the bids? That was my point.
I see. But in these contracts, it was a variable in the bids, and the city's obligated to pay. If they accept the M. Louise contract, they're obligated to pay the higher percent.
I get this. And in this regards, this question, that's why the question was for transportation, not your client, not his client. I'm trying to understand why the city does this to itself, because it puts us in this position where now we are, by following our own rules, going with the second low bidder and paying an extra several $100,000, when the only reason we're doing that is because we came up with rules that encouraged bidders to do it this way. That's my question.
I appreciate your question, and if the rules were different, I agree that the city could change its rules.
And that's okay. Now we're on the same path. Now we're both smiling. All right. I'm trying to draw out why we do things in a way that feels intuitively like it costs us money. I'm trying to process the information our subject matter experts are giving on why it really doesn't. But so far, it's still very counterintuitive.
I appreciate that, and I understand. I just want to make the point that it is important to have a cap on mobilization. Of course, it could be a directive that whatever your total bid is, the city's going to pay 8%. That's not the way it was done here. It's telling bidders, put your mobilization price down, we're going to pay, but you can't go over 8%, or you'll be non-responsive.
I definitely understand that the city has the rules it has, and that there is, I have not yet heard a reason why those rules shouldn't apply in this situation, given the law department's perspective that this would not be a level of change that the board is supposed to be making.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Just one other point. There is, I don't know that this is really in dispute, but on the ambiguity in the spec itself, there is ample law, both in Maryland, at every level of the court system, in the city's own specifications, that the written word controls over the number, and so that the right target here is the 8%, not the 10%. And of course, if any bidder, there's clearly an ambiguity in the language, but if any bidder needed clarification, they could have sought clarification. There's a mechanism to do that. Is this 8%? Is this 10%? Before they submitted the bid, and that was not done here. There's an argument that's been made, haven't heard it today, but it's in the papers, that there was a contract approved last year where the bidder exceeded the 8% number. There just wasn't a protest, so the issue didn't come to fore before the Board of Estimates. It wasn't. The protesters have said that a precedent that needs to be followed, but the issue just didn't come up. No one noticed that the bidder had exceeded 8%. It was gray, and they were awarded a contract last year that exceeded 8%. But that's neither here nor there as far as we're concerned. It doesn't apply to this contract, but I think we're trying to make one set of arguments here and not come up and repeat all of the arguments for the other two contracts.
Despite my 2 weeks of employment at Gedge 30-some years ago, I am not a lawyer, and so I don't know whether or not precedent is not set if you make a decision and weren't paying attention at the time. But that's an interesting point, and I definitely agree that no matter how we do resolve this, there's probably discussion to be had about how our rules should be going forward. But thank you.
Thank you. Sure.
First, let me explain to you what mobilization is, Mr. Comptroller, and why I have it. Unlike IT contracts, in construction, you don't get paid until after the work is done. However, in construction, there are certain upfront costs that really have nothing to do with adding value to the work, such as the cost of the bond, such as the cost of putting up fencing, such as the course of getting ready to do the work. And so the city, like every other jurisdiction that I'm aware of, it says we're going to pay you, we're going to allow you to be reimbursed for those set costs, those costs that really don't add value to the work, because we know you can't get paid until work is actually performed. None of that affects the actual cost that the government pays for the work itself. And you can the fact that the scope of the work may change during the course of the job has nothing to do with mobilization. You can always de-scope a job. The fact that the quantities aren't guaranteed is irrelevant. And the reason why you put the percentage there, although the city may not understand this, is that if you don't, you're trying to avoid unbalanced bids. You're trying to avoid a situation where somebody asks for 100% of the work up front, which would be an unbalanced bid. Now, which is why the irregularity is not fatal. The question is, does it result in harm to the city, such as would occur with an unbalanced bid? No one has stood here and said to you why this rule that you set shouldn't be followed here when it would save the city almost $2 million. Nobody said that.
They have actually said that.
Yes,
they've said that the reason we should follow the rules because it's a rule.
Yes, but you have the discretion to not follow that particular rule if it's in your interest to do so.
And that's where we have disagreement, because our own lawyers are telling us we don't.
Well, your lawyer didn't say you don't have the discretion. The lawyer says that you shouldn't, which is not a legal issue at all. You have the discretion.
Well, he did say we had plenary
authority.
He started out by saying we do have.
We have plenary and broad authority.
I just don't want you to.
That's going to be in here for a little bit.
You definitely have the discretion to do it. The question is, are you going to let the tail wag the dog? What's important to you? How much you pay for mobilization, or how much you pay for the work under the contract?
I should look down at the dog for that. So.
and the fact, I'm sorry.
The big dog.
Pardon? I'm sorry. Mr. President,
I'm sorry. I just wanted to give you, maybe to create some clarity on our concern, and I'm taking all four contracts in general.
Can you
Natalia Luis, San Luis Construction. We have a contract here where the mobilization is $1,000 difference. The contract total bid is $706,000 more with the second bidder. The mobilization percentage is a difference of, we are at 8.47, the second bidder is at 7.0%. So it's a 1.5% increase on the mobilization, a $1,000 differential on the actual cost of the mobilization, but a $700,000 increase in total cost just on this one contract to the city. Additionally, and I forgive my interruption, but I just wanted to make sure Bob got this in, because this is the true concern about being fiduciary responsible for all of us, including myself. If this were the other way, I'd be arguing this against me. you do not have a requirement percentage on MOT. It's also a lump sum item.
Maintenance of traffic.
Maintenance of traffic. You cannot change that. Our number on maintenance of traffic, which includes a whole host of activity, was $548,000. The second bidder's number was $1,595,000. That is an item that you cannot change. It is a lump sum item. So the true differentiation between all of these contracts, if you take a look at the exhibit that we sent you, really rests in the MOT number that did not have a top line. The top line is ambiguous. There have been more than just one contract with that has been given in that 8 to 10% mobilization in the past. We recognize our technical error. This is not about us not recognizing it. It's just that as someone who works here and wants to be a responsible person, we are asking that you don't take a technicality that is based on a percentage of a contract that is $700,000 higher than ours just to meet that one isolated point of did we make the mobilization percentage spec or not, when you didn't put a top line on maintenance of traffic, and as a result you have a $1.05 million greater expenditure on that item if you go to the second bidder, and the only reason you'd be going to the second bidder is based on a technicality of $1,000, where we happen to be higher on the mobilization only because the second bidder is so much higher than us. And I apologize for the interruption, but I just didn't think you were getting it across, Bob.
I apologize.
That's where the numbers lie, and that's where the concern is. Thank you for your indulgence.
Unless you have questions, I don't think I can add to that. I mean, I think it makes it plain. The value to the city is in the total price that you pay for the contract. If you want to give away $1.5 million, I can't make you do otherwise, but it simply doesn't make any sense, and no one has argued that it does. Thank you.
I would like to correct the factual record, if I may, on what the mobilization was on this contract. So we're talking about TR 24012. Their mobilization percentage was 14.75, and it was $550,000. P. Flanagan's mobilization percentage was 7.5%, and it was $300,000. So just to be clear, their mobilization cost was, the raw number was $250,000 higher than the P. Flanagan number.
Which, just to be clear, is the difference between the bids. It's their mobilization was $250,000 higher, but your bid was $250,000 higher.
That is correct.
Okay.
Could you respond to the numbers?
Yes. The number, I gave an example of one of the 4 contracts. One has already been awarded, 3 are being protested. So I apologize that I didn't state the contract number. And the contract number that I read to you was 24014. Which contract number would you like to hear from?
So right now we're on,
I was getting confused because I didn't get a 1.5 million.
I know, I'm sorry about that.
Right now we're on 1.2.
1.2.
But I think to everyone's argument, and for the sake of everyone's time, it makes.
I just wanted to.
No, listen real quick. It made sense to conflate all the discussion, because the reality is the crux of the matter of your concern today is going to be consistent throughout the board, and the justification from the city is going to be the same. So I'm not certainly looking at we're on 1.2 and you provide us numbers for 1.4. I think the basis of your argument is still the same.
And if you take a look at the numbers, they are reflected the same way on all of the contracts. So the contract in question, I'm sorry, you said 1.2.
Yeah, we read in 1.2.
Okay, 1.2. The MOT that does not have a top line percentage, you would paying for the maintenance of traffic $400,000. If you were to go with Flanagan, you would be paying $1.3 million for an item that is lump sum, just like the mobilization. So although the mobilization in this case, M. Lewis was at $550,000 and Flanagan was at $300,000, and we did overwhelmingly exceed the mobilization percentage on that contract, absolutely. You are literally, the delta between both is that you would pay M. Lewis $950,000 between those two items, and you would pay Flanagan $1.6 million. And when the argument of items that increase or decrease, because they do, these are not static, they do depend on the work that is done, I can assure you that these are lump sum items. You will pay that differential whether you do more work or less. So that $700,000 will be paid. So that's what I wanted to clear, and I'm sorry that I got the wrong contract in the first
again,
place.
no need to apologize. Quick question, with mobilization and MOT, is MOT paid out the same way as mobilization? Can you just provide?
MOT is paid out, is it 10%? I'm not sure if it's 50% first and then the rest.
DOT, just so we can have for the record, so, I mean, could you tell us, is there a difference to pay out for MOT versus mobilization?
Mobilization is upfront.
It's 50% upfront.
That's a cash flow.
As MOT paid 50%.
Mobilization, MOT is the item. It's a lump sum, but at different locations, city has,
But it's not upfront.
It's not upfront, and they have to provide the backup document.
Got it.
To get the money. Sometimes the money is left in the contract.
Good. I just wanted to make sure, since we were making the comparison,
Work is not
that
done.
the disbursement is not necessarily the
There's a
same. But I
difference.
appreciate it. Yeah. Are there any other additional questions or concerns? Mr. Mayor?
I make a motion to approve.
Second?
I did have one other.
So there's a motion on the floor from the mayor to approve. There is some unreadiness from the comptroller. Ms. Comptroller?
I
Is it
just-
specific to the motion? Obviously, it is.
It is. I wanted to make one comment about this entire conversation, which is that every elected member of this board over the last 4 years has expressed their support for moving towards a best value contracting and moving away from the low bid that we do right now. And we haven't done it yet, but we will. And so I wanted to say that when we get there, there will be multiple instances, I expect, where we will end up going with contracts that cost the city more than somebody was willing to do it for, but we have made a conscious decision through a rubric that is yet to be designed to make certain that we're getting the best value out of it. However, since we have not done that yet, and we are currently living in a low bid environment, I will also point out that we need to get there fast if we're not going to be actually taking low bids and we don't have the same level of assurance that we're getting the best value.
Mr. Mayor?
I just would add that it's not just low bid, it's lowest responsible bidder, which means you have
Fair.
to follow the rules.
Granted.
So you finished?
Yep.
All right. So there's a motion on the floor. It's been properly seconded. Any additional unreadiness? Hearing and seeing none, we take a vote.
Aye.
Aye.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Please note that there is 4 in the affirmative, 1 nay vote. This item is approved. The next item on the agenda can be found on page 230 and 231, SB 2413910, Department of Transportation. This request is to approve an award to P. Flanagan and Sons for TR 24012 resurfacing highway at various locations, Northwest Sector 2. A protest has been received by Robert Fulton DeShee on behalf of M. Louise Construction. On behalf of DOT, we have
Director Corinne Johnson, Good morning again. So similar to our last item, we are requesting approval to the lowest responsible bidder, P. Flanagan & Sons, at their bid price of $4,257,132.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions or concerns from members of this board for DOT? No. Hearing and seeing none, Mr. DeShiel, would you like to come? And Madam Director, if you could allow Mr. DeShiel to come forward.
I just want to remind the board that the delta between my client's bid, which was a responsive bid, was $700. I think this is when we were $765,000 lower than the Oak contract you're about to award. And I haven't heard, maybe you did, but I haven't heard any explanation for why the taxpayers ought to be charged that amount.
Thank you, Mr. DeShiel. Are there any questions or concerns for Mr. DeShiel or DOT?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Hearing and seeing none, there's a motion on the floor to approve. It's been properly seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
The ayes have it. This item is approved. The next item on non-routine agenda can be found on pages 233, 234, SB 241. 3912, Department of Transportation is requested to approve an award to P. Flanagan & Sons for TR 24014 resurfacing highway at various locations, Southeast Sector 4. A protest has been received by Robert Fulton DeShiel on behalf of M. Louise Construction. Today we have in front of us for transportation.
Hello, Director Corinne Johnson for DOT. So for this item, we received 3 bids on the contract. We had a range of bids from about $3.5 million up to $4.27. In this case, we are recommending award to the lowest responsive bidder, P. Flanagan & Sons, at their bid price of $4,278,862. And this also had the inquiry, the question of the 8% and the 10% mobilization that we just had the very enlightening conversation about.
Thank you, Madam Director. Are there any questions or concerns for DOT? Hearing and seeing none. Thank you. Mr. DeShiel, would you like to come and present, or M. Louise?
Just to have the record reflect that the delta in this contract, the amount that the board is prepared to award, is a delta of $706,126,000. That is, my client's bid was $706,000 lower of taxpayer money that you're about to give away. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeShiel. Are there any questions or concerns from members of the board for the administration or the protester? Hearing and seeing none, at this time we'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
The ayes have it. This item is approved. The next item on our routine agenda can be found on pages 237 and 238, SB 2413910. Department of Transportation is requested to approve an award to P. Flanagan & Sons for TR 24011, resurfacing highway at various locations, Northeast Sector 1. A protest has been received by Robert DeShiel on behalf of M. Louise Construction, as well as Gray & Sons. On behalf of DOT, we have
Director Corinne Johnson. Actually, I read the wrong thing last time. Okay, so for this one, this was this is 24011, correct?
No.
What was the number?
909.
24011, yeah. The award 24011.
Okay, thank you. All right. All the different pages. All right. So this one we had 3 bids, M. Louise Gray & Sons and P. Flanagan & Sons. The bids, in this case, we're recommending award to the third, to the third bidder, who was the acceptable lowest and responsive bidder, P. Flanagan, at their bid price of $4,278,862. Also has the noted 8% versus 10% mobilization matter. Any questions?
No, are there any
Thank
questions
you.
or concerns for members of this board for Department of Transportation? Hearing and seeing none, thank you so much. On behalf of Mr. DeShiel, or?
No, I'm tired. Go ahead.
So first.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the board. Thank you for hearing us out today on this complex issue. There's multiple contracts at issue here. Gray & Son, my client is only here about this one particular contract, TR 24011. And this one, I'm glad I can distinguish a little bit from the other fight that's going on here. This is a pretty simple one for us. You heard a little bit about it earlier, but essentially it boils down to this, 8, 10 next to each other. Right, there's an ambiguity in the bid proposal, right? My client acted reasonably by submitting a bid where the mobilization number was 9.8%. Why did they act reasonably? Because they got the same contract last year when their number was 9.91. Flanagan wants to come in today and say that that doesn't matter because it wasn't contested. However, I will thank Mr. DeShiel in his protest letter. He essentially concedes that the board acted arbitrarily by ruling against, or excuse me, that DOT acted arbitrarily by ruling against Gray & Son, really with no basis whatsoever. We acted reasonably because we were awarded the same contract last year. We did a good job last year. We submitted the same thing, actually at a lower mobilization number this year, fully expecting that we were going to get this contract. We are $196,000 cheaper than Flanagan's bid. There's 3 bidders here. There's Flanagan & Sons, who's the highest bidder. There's Gray & Sons, that's in the middle, and then there's M. Louise. M. Louise's mobilization number on this is over 10%. You guys have had that fight all morning. I'll allow you to continue that, and Mr. DeShiel wants to fight about that. We heard from the Department of Law. That number exists for a reason. We had to have guardrails in place. We played within the rules. The only ambiguity here was the 8 or 10%, right? We had every reason to believe that 9.8% was a reasonable number to use because we were granted the contract before. I'm a trial attorney by trade. I'm not going to make extensive legal arguments. I can jump in if Flanagan wants to talk about their legal basis for the words prevailing over the numbers. Quite frankly, they're citing to a case that does not apply here. It involves the Uniform Commercial Code. There's nothing here that has anything to do with the Uniform Commercial Code. It quite frankly doesn't apply. They overstate the law. We can get into that more. I think our bid protest letter really breaks that down. We spent a lot of time kind of debunking that legal argument, but I won't bore you today. We acted reasonably. The board has a responsibility to give this to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. M. Louise is not responsive, which leaves Flanagan and us. We are lower than Flanagan. We were awarded the contract last year. There's no reason that it shouldn't be awarded this year. I think it would be in the best interest of the city and the taxpayers to give it to Gray & Son this year, so I would urge the board to award this contract to Gray & Son. Thank you.
Thank you. Can anyone from the city answer
Excuse me.
to? You have a question?
Do you have a card?
Ms. Control, go ahead.
Do you have a card?
I do.
Yeah. I didn't hear your name clearly at the beginning, so we want to make sure we have it. Thank you.
Is that your question?
Yep, that's it.
If I don't get another chance, by the way.
No,
in
you'll get
personal
another chance.
capacity, I just want to say thank you, Mr. Mosby, for all your service.
I appreciate that so much. And you'll get another chance. I guess what I would want to hear from is, from a city perspective, do we deem the Gray & Sons bid as unresponsive? Is that the basis of where we are with this? Because I think that's a critical point to talk about right now.
Yes.
All right. And could you explain why it's unresponsive based off of the discrepancy of 8 and 10%?
Yes, Matthew Bradford, Chief of Staff for the Law Department. With regard to the typographical error in the bid solicitation, DOT's position is that written words prevail over arithmetic numbers, and this is consistent with persuasive authority, including the city's Green Book and other legal authority. I'd also like to point out that there was a talk about reasonableness. What is reasonable, as in our Green Book states, when you have a question about a particular term in a bid specification, particularly where there seems to be an error, you have to ask about it. And the fact that Gray & Sons knew about it before but did not raise it to the board subsequently in this current bidding solicitation is not reasonable from the Law Department's perspective. Thank you.
Would the fact that historically it was acceptable, would that counter that argument?
Well, I don't know if it was historically acceptable because I don't know if DOT knew about it. I believe they didn't, nor was it raised to the board, and so.
No, I'm saying from the perspective of the potential bidder.
No,
if I'm a potential bidder and I bid on something this way in the past, and it's been set up the same way in the past, why would I then in turn think I need to go and communicate to the city that maybe there's a discrepancy? I'm under the impression, I would assume, that it's acceptable because it's been accepted in the past of a contract that has been completed in the past.
Again, it is the onus is on the bidder to, if there is some discrepancy, which this clearly is, it has a written number versus a arithmetic number, the onus is on the bidder to make DOT aware of that discrepancy if they notice it. And so while it may be true that the board approved the contract last year without this issue being raised, that does not set a precedent that somehow binds the board. The board still has the authority to inquire why you did not ask us about this particular discrepancy, even if the city did not notice.
Well, I think it's bigger than the board. I guess the assumption is it wouldn't really come to the attention of the board because we didn't bid on it, right? I think the two stakeholders at this is DOT, who was ultimately responsible for kind of conducting and facilitating the process, and the actual bidders. What I'm hearing from you is their bid is unresponsive because there are some discrepancies in what DOT set up for them in the 8 versus 10%. But I would assume that the bidders who bid on this last year or whenever it came up before were under the impression that what they did in good faith and was ultimately awarded in good faith, that it was still the same consistent process moving forward, and maybe didn't decide to highlight that to the city. I bring that up because I think that's the basis of the argument associated with the fact that we deem them as unresponsive, and I don't know if that necessarily is the right approach, knowing the history of us allowing that and supporting that in the past.
I'll only note that I can't say what the bidders were thinking at the time because none of them raised the issue. And so it may be the case that none of them noticed the particular bidding error, or it could be that they disregarded it. And either way, the city, it is expected that there will be typographical errors sometimes, and the expectation is that the bidder will ask about those errors if DOT or the board does not catch them in the first instance.
Mr. Mayor?
And just, Mr. Chief of Staff, I know you mentioned it earlier, but it's my understanding that the Green Book specifically kind of addresses this kind of thing. Can you talk about that?
Yes, there is a provision in the Green Book that specifically talks about if you are submitting a bid and you have any questions or issues with what's in the bidding document, that you as the bidding party ask about it. And so, again, if there is a discrepancy there, the onus is on the bidder per our Green Book to ask questions about that particular discrepancy.
Again, I'm just stuck on this history thing. This is something that was acceptable in the past. It's something that is of concern now, and to deem the bidder unresponsive for something that they were responsive to before seems to me as a concern. Madam Solicitor, yeah.
No, I just wanted to say that I think you would have to prove the knowledge of DOT that they actually knew it existed, and then we're getting back into the agency. But I think in terms of consistency of how we're going to be applying these, we have to look at the rules and if people actually follow them. And I think that's sort of the basis as can we look past those rules so that we can get to the overarching number. And I think that's probably a process where we're looking for the overall bid, because I see many times that really bothers me where you have the lower bidder and then these change orders, we end up paying twice, 3 times as much. It's ridiculous. So there's definitely reform that needs to be made, but we do need to at least follow the rules.
Mr. Comptroller.
Well, first of all, I want to say both to the Chief of Staff and to Madam Solicitor, I appreciate you for doing a great job of protecting us, because that's your job. You're our lawyers, we're your client, and I appreciate that you have laid out all of this in a way to make it clear that we as the board should do this if we want to minimize problems going forward, and we shouldn't do that if we don't want to get it into trouble. The only part that I continue to be concerned about in that regards is that at the end of the day, we, the city, made a mistake at the very beginning of this. We put out a bid document that was inaccurate. We had a typo in it. And I feel like there should be, to say that in the Green Book, the rules are if you see something that you have questions about, you're supposed to come to us, and if you didn't come to us, that absolves us. I get why that is legally sufficient, but it feels like there's a missing amount of accountability when we at the beginning were the ones who made the mistake. And I mean, I guess technically we are paying for it in the sense that now, by following our own rules, we are going to end up paying almost $2 million more.
I think there are a couple of factors to consider there, and I see the director wants to speak. So, Director, you want me to yield first and then go?
Please.
Well, I was only going to say, one is these are sophisticated parties. They're not before the board the first time. And it is expected that they will understand the Green Book because the city grants a lot of contracts. And there are going to be errors. There's no doubt about that. And so from the city's perspective, if you notice that there is a discrepancy in the contract, that is why it's in the Green Book that you ask about it. The same goes for the persuasive authority about when you are submitting bids, written figures versus arithmetic. There are processes in place to make sure that if there is an error, it is alerted to the city. And again, the fact that a party knew that there was a discrepancy and proceeded without asking, I think says something about them as well as a sophisticated party who has been before this board before. Director.
Yeah, just to add to that, did we have any pre-bid meeting for this contract?
At DOT?
Yes. We did. So did that question come up during the pre-bid meeting about that specific item?
It didn't come.
Okay, thank you.
I believe the council president had a question for me.
No question. Any other questions, concerns? You both of you will have an opportunity to rebut. Or
He's rested now.
He got his energy back.
I just say, I'm very brief. $569,000, that's how much we were lower than this guy who's getting ready to speak now. Than Gray. $569,000 lower than Gray and Son. And it, you know, I've been coming here too long. I'm gonna stop sooner or later, because this is
I get to
really,
stop today.
Yeah. Maybe I should too, because this is really a dark day. I mean, this is really a dark day. Just have the Department of Transportation say that the mobilization figure is so important that on that one issue, without regard to the lowest bid, it's important enough to declare two bidders non-responsive, but not important enough for them to notice what they put out in their own document. I've heard it all. I've heard it all.
He said, amen.
No, we don't do it like this. No, I hear you. I hear you. Yeah, please come forward.
Thank you. Just briefly, as to the mayor's issue about the Green Book, as well as the chief of staff's issue about the Green Book. Again, if the regulations state that we were supposed to bring this to the attention of the board if we noticed the error, there was no discrepancy because there was already a precedent. We had been given this award. So the idea that this year, all of a sudden, we were supposed to raise an issue about this, I mean, again, if this had been denied last year, we would have come in and protested last year, but it wasn't. The city made its decision last year and gave us the contract at 9.8%. We were compliant. We played within the rules that the city set, and we were the lowest bidder, and that's why we got the contract last year. This year, we played within the rules that the city set, and we were the lowest bidder again. It's kind of like, I was explaining to a colleague, it's kind of like a Goldilocks situation here, where there's, you have Flanagan that has the 8% number, but their bid is just too high. And you have M. Luis, who has the lowest bid, but they're not compliant with the rules that we've set out, and we've been arguing about all morning. Gray and Son is just right. We did everything right. We played within the rules. We had no obligation to bring this to the board per the Green Book because there was no discrepancy this year. We already have a precedent here. This was granted. We did so in good faith. I don't see a reason why Gray and Son should not get this.
Mr. Mayor?
I just have a question based on what you just said. Did you guys raise it last year when you were above?
I don't believe we did.
Okay, thank you.
No, we just submitted the bid in good faith, and then,
They didn't raise the issue, and they got the award.
Madam CAO?
Good morning, Honorable Board. Faith Leach, Chief Administrative Officer for the City of Baltimore. I just wanted to double down on this piece about the Green Book. I think there are two pieces with the Green Book, but I think the more important component of the Green Book is that it specifically talks about this type of issue, if it is numerical versus if it is written. And it is the numerical, if I'm not mistaken, or the written, excuse me. It is the written that prevails. So it specifically tells us how to handle this issue, and I understand what happened in the previous year. But again, at some point, we have to decide if we're going to follow our own rules or not, and I think that is the question that is before the board.
Thank you. Go ahead, you can. You have to speak into the mic, and press the button, please.
I understand.
Is it? Yeah, press the button.
I understand everyone's concerned. I think my last thing to say on it, if it's a problem, again, I think that Gray and Son deserves the award this year. This year, based on the precedent. But why don't we just fix the typo? It won't be a problem next year. You know, moving forward, this won't be an issue. We've, you know, established there's some complex issues here with this particular bid. But again, I think that we've all learned a lot about numbers versus words here today. Gray and Sons acted in good faith. Again, we just follow the precedent. That's it. So I would urge the city to fix the typo, and if it comes up again, we'll bring it to the board's attention.
All right, thank you. Mr. Mayor?
I just have a question, just out of curiosity. I think I know for two, but just curious if Mr. Shields, and for you, sir, and for you, if you all could tell us where your companies are headquartered, please.
We have a plant in Brooklyn. We have a primary construction plant in Montgomery County, I think. It's in Curtis Bay. I'm sorry, not Brooklyn. Curtis
So your
Bay.
headquarters, where you go to work at, ma'am, is every day is in Curtis Bay.
Yes.
I go to work to all of my facilities. Curtis Bay I spend a lot of time on because it's our operational.
So if we look up M. Louise in Maryland databases, it's going to say BizTech. It's going to say Baltimore City.
It's going to say Anne Arundel County. I'm in Curtis Bay, just over the line in Anne Arundel County. It's going to say Silver Spring, Maryland. I have administrative office there. It's going to say Rockville, Maryland. We have an asphalt plant there, and it's going to say Glen Burnie, Maryland, because we also have an asphalt plant there.
Thank you, sir. And I love the birthday cake tie.
Gray and Sons in Timonium.
Thank you.
It's where?
Timonium.
And just to put it on the record.
Hold on, we got. Yeah, Flanagan and Sons.
Sorry, you were out in the back.
Flanagan, you guys have been patiently waiting. I just wanted the two protesters to have the ability to talk at the same time to address some of the concerns and the questions that were raised. So that's why I asked you to just hold on before you came and provided your testimony.
I appreciate that, City Council President. So Flanagan's located at 2444 Loch Raven Road in Baltimore City. I just wanted to respond to the Gray argument that basically the number, it doesn't matter. They're allowed to follow the 10%, not the 8%. There is ample law. The attorney today argued that there really is one UCC case that we've relied on. No, there is Maryland Maryland Supreme Court case law, quote, where the same number is intended to be expressed both by words and figures, and there is conflict between the two, the words control. There is the Court of Appeals of Maryland. There's precedent from there. There's precedent from the UCC, and as was mentioned, the Green Book at spec section 002113.080 also has the figures control over the numbers language. So this is consistent application of law. And so it doesn't really matter what happened last year. Someone reading this, there is not a conflict. Someone reading the 8 and the 10 has to interpret it as the 8. If it had been reversed and the written word was 10 and the parens was 8, then the controlling number would be 10. It's not, there is no conflict here. The law has contemplated how you deal and how you reconcile an apparent conflict. And so, yes, would it be nice if the specs were changed? Sure. But anyone reading these specs should reasonably conclude that their mobilization number cannot exceed 8%. That's the only way to read these. In terms of the precedent, I've made the point already. It really isn't a precedent when there is not a challenge. I can tell you P. Flanagan was a higher bidder last year, and we would have protested had we discovered this issue. We just reviewed the bid tabs, and we did not figure this out. We did not notice it. So this year we did, and we brought it to the board's attention through a protest initially, and then there was a proposed award to us, and we responded. But it is now on the table. This will become a precedent. What happened last year where the issue was not raised is not a precedent. In the courts, that's how it would be. Of course, you guys have your own authority. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anything left from one or two of the protesters or from the city?
All right. I think we made our point. We followed precedent. We acted reasonably. We just had to ask that the award be granted.
Thank you so much. Anything else from the board?
Motion approved.
There's a motion on the floor.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor. It's been properly seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
The ayes have it. This item is approved. The next item on non-routine agenda can be found, is actually a walk-on item, SB 2414803, City Council. These requests, and thank you everybody for coming up and participating and providing your testimony. This is from the City Council. Request is to approve a grant agreement for Elevate Baltimore Incorporated. On behalf of City Council, we have.
Good morning, Honor Board. My name is Aaron DeGraffenright. I'm General Counsel to the City Council. And we're working on a grant agreement to Elevate Baltimore to get it onto and approved by the board before the close of the council term. This is a grant agreement that the council president led with the leaders at Elevate Baltimore to fill a funding gap that they had to provide services to a list of schools that they have that's attached to the contract agreement.
Thank you, Mr. DeGraffenright. Are there any questions or concerns from members of the board?
Not a concern, but do you have before you a list of those services that we can have in the record?
Yes.
Oh, well, okay. I just meant to share with,
There's a whole, part of the grant agreement is a two-page list of scope of services with the list of the schools where they're operating and where they will operate under the grant agreement.
Excuse me. Okay. So community school coordination, college tour, mentoring, and Elevate for Justice, and academic classes at a variety of schools. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions or concerns from members of this board?
Motion to approve, sir.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor. It's been properly seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. Thank you so much, Mr. GC. At this time, I'll turn it over to the mayor.
Well, Mr. President, we know this is your last BOE. I know that you'll probably be celebrating that for the rest of the day, but I wanted to, I know I did it publicly the other day. Again, thank you for your years of service to us and the citizens of Baltimore. As everyone knows, the council president and I were sworn in together on December the 8th of 2011. This is actually the first time I've ever been sworn into office, and it wasn't on December the 8th. But I want to thank you for all your years of service, all the fights, all the walks, East Baltimore, North Avenue, west to East, Hilton and Milton and back again. All the things that we've been through together here to make the city a better place. And I think you and I would agree that Baltimore, and particularly for people in places that are like where we come from, is better today, and that is due a lot to your leadership. So thank you. From here, the time that you left us and went to Annapolis and realized that City Hall is a lot better and came back. But most importantly, I think one of the things that you've done, probably the best thing that you've done, has been showing folks how you can be a loving and devoted father and a public official at the same time. So, ladies, I know you know that your dad is one of the best dads in the world, but I just wanted to say that publicly, and you know how much I hate these. Wanted to give you official mayoral citation that we had to hide from you for the whole meetings. The city solicitor kept kicking it.
I'm sorry.
This is a mayoral salute. On behalf of the people of Baltimore, I am pleased to salute Nick Mosby in recognition of your dedicated service to the city of Baltimore. Today, we bid a heartfelt farewell to a remarkable leader, dedicated father, and tireless servant of our beloved city, Baltimore. For 14 years, you've been a beacon of strength, compassion, and unwavering commitment to the people of this city. Your leadership has been defined not only by your vision for a better Baltimore, but also by the love you pour into every initiative, every decision, and every life you touch. On behalf of the people of Baltimore, I thank you for your sacrifices, your courage, and devotion to serving our community. Congratulations, sir. You are now free.
As we close, anything else? Madam Solicitor?
Yes, Mr. President, I just wanted to extend my deep-felt gratitude to you as the newcomer, not only on this board, but to city government, how you embraced me, inspired me, and challenged me from day one to tackle some of the city's most difficult situations. And I just wanted to, let you know that I saw your strength and your vulnerability at the executive order speaking for opioids, and I just want you to know sharing your personal family story gave us the extra fuel that we needed, and it'll probably stay with me for a long time. And I just wanted to publicly acknowledge that a lot of people will never know how much you've helped out in that case where there were no cameras, and the things that you've done to make sure that we stayed out of our way, our own way, so that we could get the resources that the city desperately needs. Just know that I completely appreciate that, and the city does, even if they don't actually realize it yet. So thank you so much for your help, sir. I appreciate it.
Mr. Comptroller.
I will be brief. We have not always agreed on the road to take, but hell, nobody ever always agrees with me, so that's not really a problem. But I do want to say that not at any moment have I doubted the sincerity of your commitment and compassion for the people of Baltimore, and I know that you have worked really, really hard. I have watched you work really, really hard to try to make us better than we are. And that's the best thing we can ask for from a public servant. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
One more thing. As a fellow engineer, actually, every time I came to the city council president, and I found him to be very understanding to everything that we do. So, but I just wanted, again, to be very brief. I wanted to thank you for your leadership, thank you for your support, and thank you for your friendship as well. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you for all those warm words. Give it up for our DPW Director, Khalil Zaid. First and foremost, thank you for all of those warm words, and I really appreciate it. I will say that to the solicitor's point, and I know that the mayor knows this wholeheartedly, that a lot of the work and the passion that I pour into this job was never for the cameras, and typically not in front of the cameras. And that's because I understand and know what we have here in the city of Baltimore and Charm City. I know what the city is, and the one thing that I always talk about when we talk about the numbers are the numbers that we don't read about. It's kind of like a bell curve. So, we hear the horrific stories time and time again on our news of when we're losing life, or where kids are being impacted on the streets, or folks are being impacted on the streets. We also sometimes elevate the positivity, but it's all the lost potential that's sitting in East Baltimore, that's sitting in West Baltimore, that I continue to fight for. And whether I'm city council president or not, I will continue to fight for. It's how do we develop, electrifying and elevating and connecting with the Brandon Scotts that don't get a chance to sit in City Hall as the mayor of Brandon Scotts. And unfortunately, the level of untapped potential that we have throughout our city should be our beacon call for how we change our city and transform our city. no matter the zip code that you come from in this city should not determine where you are in this city. The reality is, Brandon and we lucked up to sit in front of you here today. But that does not have to be the city of Baltimore's reality. And I ask the next council, I ask this administration, I ask this board to continue to take that charge and continue to push forward. With me, when I talk about my ability and I talk about my blessings and my opportunities, a lot of times I talk about my family. And I'm so thankful to have my brother-in-law and my sister, Damon and Nicole, here to see and witness my last meeting. My sister tells a story all the time. I'll never forget when I called home and I was worried about to graduate from Tuskegee. I didn't have the money to do it. And they put it together and allowed me to walk across that stage. So I'm truly, truly thankful. And I'll never forget that. And to my daughters, come up here. Come on. And to my amazing daughters, we did this on the city council floor. I'm going to do it again. The level of courage and the level of determination that you have embedded in you is more than most humans. You've had to sit back and watch a public spectacle of your parents for several years. You've had this federal government use millions and millions of dollars to trample into your lives for several years, and you've done it with a face of courage, and you've done it with a face of determination, and you have not allowed it to impact your schooling or anything else. And you didn't ask to be the children of Marilyn Mosby or Nick Mosby. You asked to be little children that got a chance to grow up like everybody else. And I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful for who you are, but more importantly, what you're going to mean in the future. The last thing I'll say before we close it out is Marilyn Mosby, my ex-wife, was selectively prosecuted, wrongfully prosecuted, politically prosecuted. And I call on my colleagues throughout the state, I call on anybody else throughout the state to ask President Joe Biden for her pardon. With that, Baltimore, I absolutely love you. You mean the world to me. This was a lifelong dream of mine that I had the chance to live out despite the great cloud. And I continue to hold my head up high because I am the son of Baltimore. I love you. Come on, girls.
Hi, TV25. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Board of Estimates bid opening for December 4th, 2024. We do have one addenda to share today. For the Department of Public Works, SC 994, clarifiers and gravity sludge thickeners, rehabilitation. That bid is now being opened on December 18th, 2024. Again, that was for Public Works, SC 994. That bid will be opened on December 18th, 2024. Today, we only have two bids to open, and the first is for the Bureau of Procurement. This is RFQ 000480, polymeric flocculant. Casey, what do we have?
No bids have been received.
That seems like it will be problematic. Okay. So for RFQ 000480, polymeric flocculant, we did not receive any bids for this item. Up next, our second and final bid for today is RFQ 000644. This is for RAE and RKI calibration gases. What do we have, Case?
We have received three bids. The first is from ARC3 gases.
And are these itemized or totals?
Can
you tell?
They are, The other ones are totaled. This one is not totaled. This one's just itemized, so we can refer to the agency.
Double check, it's definitely the page that should have that, okay. So for ARC3 gases, we have received a bid, but it is not totaled. So we're gonna refer this to the agency for review instead of sharing a total because we don't have one to share. So I'm gonna indicate on the bid sheet that we're referring to the agency.
And this had one flash drive and no duplicates.
Please. 0 dupes and 1 flash drive. Okay. Up next.
Okay, up next is from All Safe Industries. This has, let me confirm how many duplicates. Sorry. This is 1 duplicate.
1 duplicate?
1 duplicate and
flash drives.
1 flash drive.
1 flash drive. And do we have a total bid amount?
Yes, ma'am. Hold on, I just want to triple check because there's a lot of pages in front of me. I'm not missing a second duplicate. Yeah. I see 1. Okay. And then reviewing the price sheet, the total annual bid price is $6,590.72.
Okay. 6590.72.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, that bid amount for All Safe Industry was $6,590.72. And I believe we have one more bidder.
Maybe this is
Also, Case, there's a formatting. It's not converting to currency. I have the number correctly posted,
Okay.
but we'll just need to touch up the formatting before we post the results.
All right, and then the last thing, last bidder for RFQ 000644 is PJ Instrumentation LLC.
PG Instrumentation.
Sorry, PG.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry, that was
That's okay.
It has 1.
1 duplicate.
Let me double check. Does it have a flash drive? No flash drive.
Okay.
And the total annual bid price is $9,220.
Okay, that number was 9,220.00.
Correct.
Okay, that was our third and final bidder. And the the bid was from PG Instrumentation LLC for $9,220.00.
Correct.
And that was our final of 3 bidders for RFQ 000644. And thank all these bidders for providing us, hopefully, with RAE and RKI calibration gases. And that was our last bid opening for December 4th today. Our next bid opening is on 12/18/2024, and that is our final public bid opening for the year because that is also our last Board of Estimates meeting for the calendar year 2024. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and these bid results will be posted by close of business, if not much sooner today, on the city website, Comptroller's pages. Thank you. Thanks, TV 25.